Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us, July 20th, 2021. Hey, look, we have the commissioners here.
How about that?
How about that? Thanks for joining us today.
Put us in little chairs, too.
I know, sorry about that. You can't pump them up? I guess not.
I never would have done that to you, you know that.
I know, Bob.
Whatever. So I appreciate everyone joining us today. It's nice to have a full house full of people again. Feels like normal. And we appreciate you guys honoring the meeting that we had several months ago to join and meet every 90 days or so to discuss as a joint body. So if it's okay, I'll go ahead and kick it off. We can kind of recap what we went over last time, what's been done since then, what progress we've made, and discuss some issues moving forward, if that's okay with you guys. All right. So one of the first issues we discussed, of course, was the 911 center payment. So after that meeting, as promised, we did submit to you the fiscal year 19 payment, and our city administrator met with your county administrator and I believe chief finance officers to discuss moving forward. So that's good news to begin those discussions. So I think what we're looking for, and I know several of the people are in the audience today, would be an explanation as to why the operation of HPD and HFD calls at the 911 center require an additional payment for moving forward. I'd like to know if there are any efficiency in operations available over the last 12 years that negate that dedicated operation. So our ask moving forward, and I think County Administrator, you've been made aware of this, is a presentation made by Brian Albert from the 911 Center, Director Hayes, Sheriff Mullendor, Chief Kiefer, and Chief Lord to provide information as to the operations of the 911 Center and take questions that we can ask, and then come up finally with an agreement for moving forward. So, comments?
I was going to say, I can, and before, you're right, we did meet, Scott and I met, and we did talk about that, and we talked, and one of the things that, and I'll let commissioners speak for themselves, but I mean, obviously that's a big issue for us to try to get resolved. And I think from the county and the city, so we can come up with some sort of agreement so we don't have this issue facing us every year like we've had for a number of years. So Scott had mentioned, having, the county make some sort of presentation to the mayor and council. I'm in agreement with that. I'm okay with that. I haven't really discussed it with the commissioners, but I think we can do it maybe in a, maybe in a joint setting like this where we had, and where we would do it. Maybe we have to think about that, but come in and we can, we can go over how the 911 dispatch works, how those two dispatchers are working, and what the cost of that is to the county. And I think that's some of the things that you just mentioned that you're looking for. So I think we can plan that, and I think that would be, hopefully that would go a long way to hopefully answering your questions, and hopefully that you'll understand where we're coming from, and then we can obviously try to answer the questions that you have. Because I think until we get an agreement, whatever that turns out to be, this issue is going to be hanging over our heads for a long time. So.
Right, and that's the last thing we want. I would have loved to see it resolved by now, but I think the sooner that we can do that, that way we can all ask questions. Plus that transparency is important to our citizens. We understand that it's a cost for the county to run the 911 center. I think we all understand that. But there's also revenue that comes in from the state for running a 911 center, like the cell phone fees and whatnot. So I think it's important to weigh all these costs and figure out what is fair, what's not fair, and just be able to ask questions in public that for this long, at least since I've been in office, we haven't had the answers to.
Right, and I think we have, I mean there are a number of costs that we have, and two dispatchers, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, dedicated to a certain area. So all those things that we can do, and this was before I came. I think this Board of County Commissioners and staff, some staff is here today. I think the staff did make that presentation to the Board of County Commissioners at some point prior to my arrival. So I think we can do something similar to that and try to get your questions answered. But you understand where we're coming from as to what the cost is and what operationally how it's working now and where we should go in the future. So, and I think it would be a good idea to do it in a joint session so everybody can be part of that discussion.
Absolutely.
So when you talk about a joint session, that's after staff has met?
We have met.
Okay.
Now that was Scott and I and and Sarah Greaves and Representative.
Brooke was here,
And
yeah.
Brooke was here. So we talked generally about it. That's where we came to. We haven't had, staff hasn't sat down and discussed it, at least not since I've been here. So I don't know, do we have any of those discussions before? As to the
On
operation?
911, the only thing that we did with 911 was myself, I think Chief Lohr and Chief Kiefer visited 911 center and saw how to operate it.
So, I mean,
And I think it's only fair to be transparent that if we need an agreement. We can't continue to operate off minutes of a meeting 12 years ago. And I think it's fair that at least the council be able to ask, if we're gonna pay this money or we're gonna pay whatever amount of money for the 911 center, they understand what they're paying for. And that was the purpose behind doing that.
so, I mean, we could as staff get together and have those discussions, but I think the mayor and council have questions, and you may have questions too about that. And so when Scott and I talked, it's like maybe we should just go right to the, to make a presentation with everybody in the room. But if you'd rather have staff do it at a staff level first, we could do that too.
I want staff to meet, put some of the sausage together and bring it forth where we can have that joint transparency and have something in writing so we can start agreeing on. That doesn't mean it's etched in stone.
Gives
That
everybody
means-
preparation.
Gives everybody some preparation, that's a good word for it. And then we can begin the written agreement and put this behind us. You're absolutely
Right.
right, whether it's $1 or $1 million a year, cannot continue to operate on minutes and notes. Let's have something professional done in a contract, and I think it'll make for a better relationship on this issue.
We'll take
mean,
$1, where do we sign? We'll do the $1, where do we sign?
Well, we
Well,
might
we
be,
won't.
we might be somewhere in the middle.
We're not gonna take that $1, so
We're somewhere in the middle.
I was
just
thinking the higher level.
envisioning a normal work session like we have every single Tuesday where staff comes before us and goes over details and takes questions, except we can do it together just like this.
I'm willing to go 20, just so you know.
So,
Well, that's
we good?
more than I thought you might.
20
Is
times
that-
more.
that's a yes to move forward?
Oh, sure, we're gonna
If
be
if I could mention something, maybe with that, we could put a timeline on it. A very perceptive citizen reached out to me the last time we met as a joint body, and she said, "Did you guys just meet to plan another meeting?" I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of what happened. That was my wife, by the way. Give her kudos and credit for realizing that. But I would like us to put a timeline on this. That way, we're not coming back if we meet once a quarter, if we've agreed to meet once a quarter. I'd like to make sure that this is kind of ironed out. Our sticking points, your sticking points, next time we meet.
Sure.
Okay.
3 months, that's plenty of time. Good.
Yeah,
That's-
90 days
We'll
was
take care of
definitely
that.
enough time.
And that's what I was under the impression today kind of was, but, there's been some movement and whatnot, so I agree with you. An end date would be great. And it would be great, I have a couple, just like last time, some dates to schedule for a next meeting, if we could go ahead and do that, maybe we make that the deadline, which is 90 to 3 months. That was issue 1 that we discussed last time, 911 center. Issue 2 was the tax differential. I know staff also met on that, which is great news. We're requesting that the fire service be added into the City of Hagerstown differential, which it appears that our staff came up with, our staff, meaning all of our staff, would be about 1.5 to 2 cents on the City of Hagerstown tax differential to include that fire service. So that's another ask that we've had and a discussion that we've had, and also something I'd like to continue exploring and come up with a solution to, instead of continually talking about that. I don't know how you guys feel about that, or
Could you back up just and repeat what you said about the fire? What percentages were you using?
so our fire service is not included in the tax differential.
Right.
So if we included our $10 million fire system in the tax differential, it's about 1.5 to 2 cents difference.
Okay, that's what I missed.
And that was a number that staff came up with.
We discussed that as well, that number as well. Tax differential's kind of already down the road for this fiscal year. It'd be something we'd have to look at for the next fiscal year. I think when we met, we agreed to consider, but I think we also placed this 911 issue above, because that's something we can deal with now versus the tax differential, which is set basically for this year, and move it down the road, get this 911 center thing out of the way.
Right, so
Right, John?
That's exactly right. I mean, when we talked, we came to the conclusion that if the 911 issue is the number one on the list, they may all be 1A, 1B, 1C, but that was the first one that we thought we could tackle. We also did talk about tax differential, and we're talking about just tax differential for the city of Hagerstown. We did receive those numbers, and I've asked our budget and finance department to take a look at that and come up with, what are some real dollar figures, what that would mean to us, and what that would mean to, I guess, to the citizens of the city of Hagerstown. So we're in the process of doing that now. It is, I mean, we're already past this year, so it would have to be a discussion for next year. And, there is a statutory process, how that's supposed to work, and we're probably a little ahead of the game because they've already given us some numbers, and we're supposed to review those and then have joint discussions and talk about that, so, but anything, it wouldn't take effect until next year, even if we came to some sort of, some sort of agreement as to what that number would be, but,
Would it be fair to say you have 3 months for a negotiation, or, not a negotiation, but a presentation on scenarios for tax for 911? And would it be fair to say 6 months for a scenario on tax differentials? Would that be fair, or are we 9 months, or?
I'm in for 3 and 6. I think putting a deadline on things is
Because we'll begin our budget stuff earnestly in December, January.
We will.
So
Right.
that's
We will,
when
'cause
that
we're
already-
information will come to light
even
on
before that.
everything.
Same
You
here.
guys
Staff-
have to get, state approval for that, though?
for tax
That's a
differential?
good question. The tax
No.
We do not.
differential.
You don't.
We do not.
They don't.
It's set, it'll be set by the county.
Okay.
So, but, yeah, I mean, obviously, staff will be starting, well, actually, a budget and finance is like a year-long thing, just like it is with yours, but, I mean, we'll be looking at the budget in the fall. Commissioners will start, right after the first of the year, so, so we can have those numbers and talk about what that looks like moving forward.
Thank you.
If that's,
All right, check. That's 2 of 3. The third one
I
we
guess
talked about.
We can stop right there.
They'll-
The next one's the easy part.
They'll be
The
all
next
new
one's the easy
commissioners then,
part.
so, whoops.
So we've been talking about governance model and fire and rescue for, I don't know, as long as I've been in office, at the ESAC meetings here and pretty much everywhere. So we asked our chief to put together a proposed fire rescue governance model, which I handed out to you guys. I believe Director Hayes has seen it. I know Kingsley Poole has seen it, some of the members of ESAC. But we believe that this would be a more fair governance model that includes not just county representation, but Hagerstown City representation, EMS representation, and labor representation. And since all 4 of those groups make up huge parts of our fire rescue service, I think it's only fair that they be represented in the governance model. So our chief put this together based on his experience and tenure in a fire rescue service. He's here if you have any questions. But I know last time we've asked for a seat at the table, our fire department, which is a huge part of fire rescue here in the county. And we always say those words, but we never really articulate what we mean by that. So I thought that this was a good starting point. The bottom part in the red is geographical representation, from both career and volunteer chiefs across the city and county. And it adds career EMS and fire labor rep, like I said before. This kind of includes everyone at the table to give direction to the city and county and adds that EMS factor in as well. So I know I just kind of sprung this on you,
Yeah, I don't know.
but Chief is here if it's something you have any questions about. But moving forward, we really do think that there needs to be a change in the governance model, and I think the majority of the fire rescue folks agree as well. And Dale Fishak's here, he's the president of the Volunteer Association. I don't know if he would like to chime in or if anyone else would like to chime in, but we really would like to see a change there, so moving forward it is more fair and fairly represented across the board.
I guess I have one question for somebody, or 2 questions, and they're pretty elementary, but obviously Dale's back here, so what happens if even a scenario of this would take place? What happens to the association? What happens to ESAC? They go, but this would be the total, and how much power does the fire governance model have?
Well, I think ESAC would be replaced with a more
Right.
advisory committee that would have different people sitting at it. And I think if we're being honest, has ESAC really been effective? I think the answer to that is no. I mean, so this, Chief,
I was gonna offer up the original draft of this, and I'm actually not familiar with what's in front of you today. It's over 2 years old. So it did go to USAC, went to the director. I'm not sure that the written assault plan or whatever, but it was always intended to be the beginning, not the end of the conversation. And, this is a very similar interim step that was taken with my previous employer and their citizens to do a couple things. One, geographically balance the input from all the end users. So the red boxes there reflect east, west, south. They're still all volunteer representatives to represent all areas of the county. And that was based on a plan that DES published, breaking the county into battalions, which, and Dave's here, I don't recall if the city was a battalion or was part of, like, Funkstown halfway, and we call it Metro. But, so geographically, everybody provides input to the director and the Hagerstown Fire Chief. And I had actually thought at the time that EMS is so important that there should be a third mustard-colored block in there with some level of authority in EMS. So once again, starting point, not an end point. Doesn't mean that there's consensus here. It does provide citizen reps, but what's more important, if you look at the blue, they are the governance model. Everything would have to go through them before it went to the commissioners or mayor and council, who's the ultimate authority under the citizens that we all serve. So, you know, for the city's perspective, the current model just isn't working. I think it was designed in the World War II era. That was, the intent was that the 6 volunteer companies would represent the city of Hagerstown. At one point, that was probably successful when they were providing most of the resources and most of the funding. That hasn't been true for decades, and there's no sign that that will reverse itself. So the city of Hagerstown itself is unrepresented in any current model. And I think mayor and council has transmitted to me, it's in every public document we've talked about, that's just unacceptable. The city has too much skin in this game, and we need to do something to advance it forward. We haven't been able to do that in 6 years. I don't know if that helps, Commissioner Wagner, with your question or not.
Yeah, I mean, so where's the association fit into this?
Well, it's their members that would be representing that red, but a red box could be created for the association.
Right.
That's really, like I said, starting point, not an end point.
And I'll just say that, you know, again, and staff has met on a number of these issues, and we just talked generally about this. So I haven't seen this before, I don't know if anybody else has seen this before, but, so I mean, I appreciate what you say, it's a starting, I mean, it's the details. It's the details that, because whether it looks anything like this or what it really governs, those are all issues that would have to be worked through, so.
Well, I mean, I guess, and I'll end it here, I guess the word governance scares me a little bit, because at the end of the day, I'm the guy that gets the phone calls, I'm the guy that gets called out.
Right.
I'm the guy while everybody's home sleeping, I'm getting pounded on. So
Yeah,
I guess and it's too early to
I-
get this talking about it.
Right, 'cause-
But that's only my only concern. They know a whole lot more than I do, but I'm still the guy that gets the phone calls.
Right.
and I think it's more, governance may be a bad word to use, like maybe
Right.
more of an advisory committee, which I think ESAC was initially intended to do, but I don't know that that's working right now.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't.
Did you have
I'm
something?
not gonna put you on the spot, but I am. Dave, I don't know if you have any comments on it.
Chief Lord's right, that document is a document that circulated probably a little bit north of 2 years, with COVID coming in there. I'm assuming it is a version of that, a document.
It's the same one.
Yes, so, I think at that point, the conversation was more on an advisory group that
Right.
could take a right? Sometimes we get it wrong, at least in the perception. But that's one of the things that would need to go into any change, whether it's an advisory council, such as ESAC and 3 or governance board, there would have to be a criterion that shows what it's going to be consulted on. It wouldn't be every day-to-day operational component, at least I would not suppose to be that. It would be strategic missions, maybe additions, subtractions, at least in a conversation about budget items, those types of things. I think Frederick County has something similar to this, which is in part where it is brought to paper from, and I believe theirs is an advisory council, not a governance board.
So,
I feel like I'm
yeah, and ultimately, obviously, the elected bodies are the ones that make, so I agree with you. We need to be careful about how we do that.
Well, and if I believe it says governance, based on my experience, because there is government included in the decision chain with commissioners and mayor and council. I think if you take the blue down, then that's the meat of this, which is truly an advisory group. The governance is you.
Dale, did you have something to add?
I do.
Thanks.
And I want to be clear, I'm going to speak as president of the association. To answer Randy's questions, I will fight that the volunteers have a place at the table, and I think that's it. But I would be remiss if I did not stand here and tell this body that we have just gone through a great change in emergency service. We've added career personnel in the county. We recognize nationwide, all over the nation, a decline in volunteerism. So there needs to be a change as how we move forward in the fire and EMS field. And with that comes how we lead and direct that field. I agree with Dave's comments. I don't believe we need to get down to the roots where we say, you know, this person needs to command the fire scene this way, or ambulance needs to have X number of Band-Aids. But I do believe today is the day that we need to look at how we move forward to discuss tough issues, whether it is how we staff units in the future, how we come up with funding, how we augment a career system with volunteers, or augment a volunteer system with vice versa. So I applaud that there's a discussion here today, and I do support and believe it's needed. But to answer Randy's question directly, volunteers need a place at the table, because I don't think there's anybody in this room that says that this system can't survive without volunteers. And vice versa. We're not going to be able to get out in the future without the support of career personnel to stand up as well. And we now have another piece of the puzzle with the county career personnel, that we now have volunteers, we've got city career personnel, we've got city volunteers, we've got county career personnel. It's becoming too much to manage. When you just simply look at our command structure in the fire and EMS field, you know, our command span is about 5 to 6 people. We're trying to manage a system that has many more components than that, and we're gonna need some help and some guidance. So I think it's a welcome thing to look at. I think Chief Flores presented, and I've seen it, the START document, which he discussed, and I think we've just talked about that here. But I think there's work ahead of us, but it's work that needs to be done, and I would encourage a timeline to be established to finish that discussion and come up with some parameters as how we get to the end goal.
Thanks, Dale. So my favorite part about government is how we always put together committees to look at everything. Ha ha. But like, do we put together a committee? You know, how do you guys want to go about? I trust our chief, just like you trust your chiefs and you trust your directors. I'm certainly not going to go tell a firefighter how to run their fire department. That's not going to happen. But we still have to make very important decisions on their funding. So I would rather hear directly from them and be advised by the people who are doing it every day and who our decisions are affecting. So I would like to come up with some sort of model like this. Do you want to form a committee, or how do you think we find resolution to that?
That's what I was wondering. Are the captain's the one that made this up? Who made this up?
Our chief,
Or chiefs?
yes.
So just city chief now?
I'm not sure if there was input. I mean, I know he communicates with
What I would
Director
say
Hayes
is
and-
modification
That's a good
probably,
question.
At least 4 different systems.
He said, let's make this an exact work at it.
A little hybrid. It's a expanded version of the transition that occurred 3 decades ago. Montgomery County, Frederick County went a different route, Albany County went a different route, Howard County went a different route. But they've all had to grow into handling the demands of the system and keep current with federal regulations and all the other things that, COVID was an avid experience, I think, for the system, right? Like it was in a lot of places. Not just COVID, what about the 200-yard wide tornado that touches down in Martinsville, and skips to the west end of Hagerstown and exits in Funkstown? We all have to work together, volunteer and career, and be able to share resources and respond to the citizens' needs. The governance model now is largely based on committees that, honestly, I participated in ESAC voluntarily, even though we, the city, did not have a vote in that model. Councilmember Elshire, Mayor Keller participated in that. Certainly, Commissioner Kiefer, Commissioner Wagner, and Commissioner Klein have attended those meetings regularly. But if I'm being honest, I can't think, in the 6 years I've served as the city's chief, of 3 deliverables from my record. And that, I'm not taking a swap at something. We've had this conversation many, many times in many, many forums, but we remain no action. So I would say anybody take a second look at that. Try to keep the group small and put a deadline on it. And
Did you work with the county chief and with Mr. Fishak and?
absolutely, I do every day.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
those are the parties that.
I do every day.
It's a great idea.
All right, Director Hayes,
Let's
Dale
stop.
Fishak, you guys are officially appointed. You heard that.
They see each other every day, so there's
I know.
your answer.
All right.
I think the biggest concern with that is the fact that the city did not have representation or a vote on this app. And I think that's where the biggest concern was for our chief and for the mayor and Kristen. I mean, there's a lot that needs changed or bettered, and we just don't get any, we just weren't having any input. And when input that I heard that we tried to give, we were told, basically, we don't want your input. And so that, so here we sit, seeing things happen, especially in the volunteer area, that, we have absolutely no say in. And again, I'll be like the mayor, I don't know a thing about fighting the fire. I see a fire and I see people running in that building, and I mean, they're heroes, I got no idea how to fight a fire, but I have people that do have an idea, and we weren't having a say whatsoever.
Since it's the first time you've seen it, I would like to point out one other thing that's just critical in my mind. It was never the intent of this proposal for Hagerstown Fire Chief or Director of Emergency Services to have a vote in this model. In other words, the system feeds us. We report to what I call the governance model, we call advisory model, whatever, the people in blue. We will never have a vote. We're staff people. We are obligated to report the facts to the governing bodies, which ultimately are the political leaders. And I think that's clean. If somebody else thinks different, then at least in my experience, that's normally what happens. The chief that they are obligated to report to their bosses
anything to add?
So what happens now is the staff put together a committee, or who puts together a committee, and how what, I mean, staff will have to take it and go with it at this point, is that correct? So that'll,
The Chief and Director Hayes and Dale and
I would defer.
someone from
to
EMS?
Director Hayes, but maybe we want to add an EMS rep on the bottom.
That's what- yes. For sure, someone from EMS.
It's important enough that, that's the majority of our business, let's face it. So, but I'm just happy that he's working on something and that, we're establishing some sort of time.
So since we already have a base model that it seems like there was some agreement on, this is a good start, maybe you guys work together on editing this document and come up with a more final presentation for the next meeting? Does that work for you guys?
May I make a suggestion? In all respect, we have an agenda of what we were gonna talk about too, when we meet. Can we make that work together on what the items are gonna be, so we can be prepared, or citizens can tune in to watch?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the next time's in your house, so
Yeah,
that's
I know,
on
but
you.
I want us to work, I want us to work together on the agenda so we're mutually agreed, but it's there,
Absolutely.
okay?
We can have an
We don't forget anything.
Yeah, I mean, what I don't know, Mayor, I don't know who all was involved in this and who, so you might be right. I mean, maybe there is a general agreement, maybe there's not, I don't know, but we'll have those discussions internally, but, and that won't slow up the process. It's just whether maybe we start with this and work our way, and whether it'll look like this at the end, I don't know. Whether
No, probably not.
From this group, when you all come back, but I don't know, I don't wanna speak for anybody who may or may not have been involved in this discussion, so.
yeah, you're gonna sort of start from scratch anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have something on a
something.
paper to start with, and I think that's, but,
Thanks. So, well, that covered everything from the last meeting, so now let's start the new one. Do you, what do you, throw it at me, what would you guys like to discuss?
Commissioners?
I don't know, this is pretty much everything that's been bounced around since I've been around.
Let's just get a contract for the dispatch and get that solved. As Mr. Nice Warner suggested, let's get it on paper.
So, 3 months from today is October 12th or 19th, so I'm gonna ask that we, I guess, come to your house next time, either October 12th or 19th, so if you let us know what works for your agenda, we can put that on the books. And then work on the 911 center presentation for that time. We have the tax differential conversation for the next meeting after that, and some sort of governance model presentation or idea of what that looks like for next time.
In October, right.
That all sound good?
The only thing I would add, Mayor, would be, John and I have also talked about ARPA briefly, and that after our discussion, Commissioner Klein, John, the mayor, and myself met with Congressman Trone a couple weeks ago now, I think it's been. But we have a project list. I know you all have a project list coming together and looking at, once we present that to our respective bodies, perhaps looking to see where we might be able to partner on some priority projects that may be able to increase the amount of funding we would be able to provide to a particular priority that serves both of us. But then also, so each have an understanding of where we would plan and where our priorities are as far as ARPA money. We both were given a large amount of money, and we need to be not only diligent with that money to make sure it goes to where it impacts the community the most, but also be transparent with it as we provide those updates to our elected bodies. So we've already talked about, I think we meet in mid-August, I think, once vacations kind of roll around. And once we get the final rule of how we can actually spend this money, we're still not sure how we can truly actually spend this money yet until the Treasury comes out with the final requirements. So once we get that, we have already begun planning to get together to get together to go over them and see where either individually or together we can make the most impact. So that would be my only update.
yeah, that'd be, it'll be, we've been talking about it at the staff level. We've talked a little bit with the commissioners. We're looking in August to come in and have a more thorough discussion with the commissioners about those funds. So, and it's always been my thought, and I think the commissioners agree with this, is, we want to look at this money as what kind of investment can we make into our community that obviously we wouldn't have been able to do without it. And part of that would be, communicating with the municipalities as to what, as Scott said, what we could partner with if there's a project that it's maybe beneficial to both, or it's a project that a municipality may not be able to do without county support. So we're looking at all the municipalities. Obviously, Scott and I, we talked, and we're going to get together and have some preliminary discussions. And as you said, we did attend that meeting with Congressman Trone, talking about that. So
Can we add that to the October meeting too?
Good, sure.
I mean, have
We
a-
should, yeah, we should be well on the way then. Hopefully the government has the
Yeah, hopefully you have
requirements out by then,
guidelines,
so-
right.
we hope so.
We could certainly provide an update by then, I think, because when you get these projects, they have to be costed out. They can all look, fantastic on paper, but then when you put a cost to it, there might be two projects and our money's gone. And we don't want that to happen. We need to, and Councilman Alshire had made a great recommendation to do categories of needs, wants, wishes, that kind of thing. And then prioritize within those and see where the projects land. And then we can go through and cost them out. Leave it to the elected bodies to determine where the priorities are that we can then go out and start taking care of.
One of the things Congressman Trent said, there might be priorities, but there might not be immediate funding, so we should look at all the funding mechanisms. Something low on a priority may have the funding at that time, so we should not rule that out waiting for priorities. Is that accurate on what he said, so don't rule?
We gave them 62 projects. I'd love for them to find funding for 62 projects. And it doesn't have to be through our ARPA.
Well, yeah, and, the interesting part of that, I thought that discussion, and I think that's what you're referring to, is that we, normally they contact us and say, give us your top three. And, they was like, give us the whole list because there's money around. Right now, there's money around. So we may end up doing the one that's 25th on our list because there's money from the government, from the state or federal government that may match. So everybody's working with him on that. His office has been very responsive to that, so.
Something that struck me at MML was, I believe it was the mayor of Rockville, but she said that she was looking at this money as a generational change, instead of looking at it as right now, this transformational change, but also a generational change. And I keep trying to keep that in the back of my mind every time I look at these projects of like, my 13-year-old, what can we do to make her world completely different 10, 15, 20 years from now? And I think we have that opportunity as a city and county, and if we can work together, all of the municipalities, not just us, but this entire county, I think we can do great things. I mean, $29 million and $20 million here, it's a lot of cash coming in that we've never had before. So I think this is a great opportunity for all of us. Do you guys have anything for the commissioners?
Commissioners, any comments, thoughts,
I have one thing.
please?
So, I actually came before you several weeks back on two matters. The first of which was in relation to the Lppi grant funding. As everyone or most people should be aware, basically what occurred is in the 2021 legislative process, the legislative body for the state identified that during the 14-month pandemic period that one of the most critical things, I think, in terms of governmental services that kept folks grounded, is probably the best word, in that duration of uncertainty and limitation and inactivity were the parks and recreational opportunities that exist across the state. And so while all kinds of things across the state were closing up, one of the things I think government was good at was keeping its parks and recreational leisure activity areas open and available. I know that my family definitely took advantage of the parks and areas that we have in this county. And so it set aside or put in place an additional 78, I think it was 78 million total, that was then divided up among the counties across the state.
Can you move your microphone?
Move your mic so that people can hear you.
Okay. Divided up among the counties across the state, and as I had indicated in my comments to you at that meeting, most of the county jurisdictions understood the premise for that funding and are sharing it in some manner with their municipal governmental bodies, recognizing that municipalities as well as counties across the state and each county have parks that provide this opportunity. One of the caveats that we experienced, and I just used Frederick County as the example, was there was an apparent slightly diminished supply of POS funds, which is the traditional parks funding mechanism that towns and counties share on an annual basis, but a significantly higher proportion amount of funding through a grant program, the Lppi. And it was purposeful that the state did this clearly because they attached criteria to this specific funding mechanism that doesn't traditionally exist with POS, and that is a more aggressive time frame in which to expend the funds, and that those funds be attributed to leisure activities most associated with the most accessible play areas, meaning that, it wasn't, fields cordoned off for specific sports organizations and things like that. And so they gave it those 4 criterias, and I use, again, Frederick County as example. I think they got $6 million. They divided that evenly between the county and the towns, which means that the 12 towns in Frederick County basically get to meet again and split up $3 million versus the $385,000 that they got through the traditional POS process, which is a huge boost, frankly, to the municipalities and the county as well. I know that Washington County in that process, I believe, secured $1.5 million. And so I'm going to make it real simple. For me, I know that we currently have a project that meets all of the eligibility criteria, which we're falling somewhat short on, and that's the skate park. I know that we've put forth some degree of consideration to the county for additional funding consideration for that, and I would just say this, and by the way, the skate park, I'm not a huge opponent or advocate. It's really Shelley's gig, who's not here, so just saying that in her absence.
She's screaming in the microphone right now where she's at home.
But here's the reality. It is shovel-ready, which is one of the criteria. It's ready to go. It's ready to be built this year, so it meets that primary criteria. Number 2, it's 100% accessible to the public at all times. Number 3, it has a 15-year life cycle, which is one of the requirements. And number 4, it's on city-owned land, which is another one of the requirements. And the LPPI funding, unlike POS traditional funding, is 100%, not 75%. Even though we're already bringing about $500,000 to the table, and this being the first year, we're not allowed to use certain specific types of matching funds. So all I would ask is this. If it were up to me and I was the city of Hagerstown and I was asking for consideration and then additional funding for one single project, it would be so we can finish this park the way it's supposed to be. I think that if nothing else tells me, and I wasn't at the meeting, but there were more than 150 people at the kickoff meeting just for the design. And we can't get 10 people at our meetings collectively on a regular basis, and to hear that there are 150 people that show up just for the design of a skate park tells me that it's a pretty paramount critical leisure activity that I think that we can all agree would be a win-win, because a good many of our youth and our families embrace it in a very active way. So, those are my comments.
And I will add the really cool thing about the skate park meeting, and there were several of us at, it wasn't the frequent flyers. We go out in the community and we see the same people all the time, the same people attend the same events, and, you get used to seeing the same faces. This was like 150 faces I don't know that I've ever seen before. And it was a lot of young people, which we all sit around and take phone calls all the time about, you need to give your kids something to do, we gotta get them off the streets, we gotta give them something to do, and this is an opportunity that really embraces that. So we are very much looking forward to breaking ground on the skate park. I know that the $150,000 ask from Dan was taken off the agenda, and I understand that there are things that happen behind the scenes, but that's another opportunity, and we'd appreciate your partnership and support of this project. It's going to move forward regardless, but it makes a difference between a really cool skate park and a really, really, really cool skate park. So,
I would just say on the skate park that I'm behind it, me personally. I think it's a good idea, and I mentioned that I was sitting in my office at church one day, and a bunch of kids came in on bikes and skateboards and started messing around the parking lot, so I went out and talked to them. I had just got done meeting with the guy, and the one boy was like, yeah, we heard about that. You know, so it probably, a lot of the new faces you saw were from out in the county.
Yes.
That are gonna come into Hagerstown to use that park, so I'm excited for it.
I'm gonna-
I hope that,
sorry.
other people get on board.
I'll quote Shelley McIntyre, who always says, if you don't have a skate park, your town becomes a skate park. And I think we've
That's
seen,
right.
we've seen that, like you
And
just.
please
your
note, we've
example.
already put 150 on POS, did we not? 150,000, wasn't that part of your POS?
That was.
Yes,
We're-
the original.
We're already starting to support it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm
You
just
guys
trying to
have
get
already
to
been
that
in
finish
support.
line.
No, just-
I know Dan Spedding's ask was 150 out of hotel motel tax. I met with him today about something completely separate. But his point to me, which I think is pretty valid, is if you compare hotel motel tax April, May, and June of this year from 2019, it's up 2 out of 3 months. That's a really, really good sign, because after 2020, which we know everything tanked, hotel motel tax is actually higher than what it was from 2019. So it looks like for the month of June it was 110,000. So 150 you're going to replenish in a month and a half.
One of that, I think, helps our support for Dan, that we put $300,000 to $400,000 of the CARES Act money to continue their marketing. So not having a break or lapse in that marketing is probably paying some of the dividends today.
Absolutely.
So that's great.
Yeah,
Great to hear.
that's great news for all of us.
I would just share that I, along with Commissioner Bergen, had a chance to tour the future site of the skateboard park a couple of weeks ago. I think Mr. Tishy was back there, was with us. Is today your birthday?
Anniversary.
Anniversary, 30 years.
Happy anniversary. But we had an opportunity to tour the skateboard park. I agree. I think it's a neat project. It really taps a demographic that probably hasn't been served with, other government outlets and recreational outlets for those individuals that like skateboarding. I've never stepped foot on a skateboard. I'd break my neck. But I think it's amazing the energy behind this program, like you mentioned. I think it also has a really big name tied to it as well at the national level. Is it what's
Spawn
the,
Ranch.
The fellow's name?
Oh, Tony Hawk?
Tony Hawk, yeah.
Yeah, his organization did give money.
And I think that's great that we can have that attention here in Hagerstown and Washington County. So when that does come up for a vote, I will be supporting it.
And it's an all-wheel skate park too, so it's not just skateboarding, which I think will be a predominant use, but rollerblades, wheelchairs, any kind of wheel is gonna be able to access it. So it's gonna be all-inclusive to our community as well. So I agree, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Appreciate your support.
Just to, Councilmember Alshire's comment about the 1.5 million, the commissioners did take action on that today. That is the action item you took today. Some of that money is going to stay to be used in county parks across the county. It's also going to be used in several municipalities, including, I think, a project for the city of Hagerstown, I think. I'm looking back here to Andrew. One in the town of Smithsburg, one in the town of Williamsport. So that money, so the commissioners took action on that today. So, and their direction to staff was, we want to spread it around to parks across the county, which I think that we did, and also try to help some municipalities. So there is I think it's a roofing project. I'm not, was it 45,000 for the city of Hagerstown, a roofing project? I think staff has been working on that. And then one for the city of, or for the town of Smithsburg, and one for the town of Williamsport. So that just happened a couple hours ago. So I know Councilmember Alshire brought that up, so.
We also allocated some money for Marty Snook Park, some playground equipment upgrade.
We did.
And while not maybe in the city of Hagerstown proper, I would imagine that park predominantly is visited by Hagerstown residents.
Hagerstown residents, right, correct. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay.
You guys, anything else to add? Commissioners?
Nothing else, commissioners, anything else?
Good.
All right.
Thank you for
We
having us.
appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Are you moving the seats? Yeah, we're gonna adjourn.
Well, we don't adjourn.
Oh, okay. Recess 5 minutes.
We're adjourning to 5.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to our July 20th work session. Up first, we have Rodney with a request for the third parking deck.
Hello again, Greg Snook is with me here, and we want to talk a little bit about a project that we've talked about for many, many years. It's in our CIP. Greg has as the Director in Chief, is working with the Maryland Stadium Authority, and obviously there's going to be a need for parking in that area. So, Greg, you want to take it from there?
Good evening. It is getting warmer here now compared to before. So I'm here tonight on behalf of Hager 5, and we have worked with the city on several projects, and we see a lot of momentum occurring here. And in talking with the city staff, we recognize the need that we probably need to start some discussions about the next parking deck. And I guess what I'm here tonight is just to share with you that we are open to talking about that, possibly there on Antietam Street with the surface lot and other options. We could work with the staff to come up with some plans and get back with the elected officials at a later date. But just trying to throw that out at this point in time, because we know between the funding, the planning, and the construction, we're probably talking several years to do this project, and not anything other than plus the cost as we go forward with this. So I'm only here tonight just to share that thought with you, and if you have any other ideas or comments about it, Hager 5 is open to that. But there is no outside money for this project, as I just wanted to note that there's no government funding. This would be a public-private partnership with the city, and Hager 5 has tried to continue and improve the projects downtown here, and so we recognize the momentum that's going on. We just want to keep that moving forward.
Great.
So I don't know if the council or mayor has any comments that they'd like to share at this time, but I just wanted to see if it was appropriate to sit down with staff and start talking about what the possibilities are.
For me, the first step would be that I'd like to put together analysis of not only the parking demand, but also the traffic patterns and everything else that would be involved in this. It'd be good to have an analysis done like that. The parking study that the city has that was very comprehensive at least 10 years ago, I would like to update it for just this little area. And that's about a $15,000 ask that I would like to put together. I think that would be a good first step. After that, if we want to move forward, then it would be putting a request for proposals together for architectural services and getting construction drawings together. So all that would take time, but that would be the next steps in my mind if we want to move forward.
I think, I mean, not to sound like a broken record, but I think I've said over and over, if others build the stadium, I've remained committed that the public infrastructure component of that is our obligation, of which the biggest is this parking facility. I think it's a necessity. I think it's been a necessity, and I think that we need to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than just the stadium. I mean, Greg, you can talk about the demand that's over there now that isn't met.
Sure. I mean, as you increase your residential housing down there or any other retail operations, I can share with you, with the little trail project that we're just doing 10 foot off our parking lot. I mean, we're losing spaces, but we basically fill that parking lot up every day. And I would say probably 90% of it are people that are renters of ours, in the other properties that we have. The other 10%, are in and out of the court system, using that for an hour or 2 hours. But the bulk of it is our long-term parkers and our renters. And then our future development that we're trying to plan for, we will need to find more parking, for sure.
Well, I've only talked about this for 22 years now, so I'm like Kristen. Aside from this fantastic economic catalyst that'll be put in our downtown, we have to. I've said for years that if you want to, redevelop the first block of Summit, the first block of Jonathan, the unit block of West Washington, the 100 block of West Washington, you've got to have this deck to feed those people and be able to have some place for those people that are going to come in and do this revitalization to be able to put their people. I mean, one of the reasons we lost a very prominent restaurant in downtown was for lack of parking. And that was probably 10, 12 years ago now. So, you know, I know that, you know, it's, I had this conversation with Rodney yesterday when I was in Colorado. You know, I went into, there was a Barnes and Nobles on the first floor, there was a restaurant on the second floor, there was other retail on the third floor of this huge building. And attached to this huge building was a parking deck that everybody came off and went into this building and out to the street. I mean, this could be set up basically this, you know, the same way and feed the same things. So, yeah, I think we need to move. I know that, you know, we've got in our CIP starting in fiscal year '24, but I think we need to bump that up, and I think we need to find a way to do it.
I mean, and the other component, since coming out of COVID, you have the Mural Theater opening back up, and also the Barbering Room. And I know just the private events that they're talking about at the Mural Theater, I get calls every day just to rent a lot at night. I mean, and the last one just came last week, and they're looking for 100 parking spots at night. So, you know, we're just going to do a whole lot rental for them, and just.
Yeah.
So I think that will continue to increase, and that's why it takes a long time to get from point A to point B in some of these big projects. They don't take months, they take several years now.
Yeah.
I agree for the need. I agree for the need to start sooner than later too. My only concern, and it's outlined in this memo, which I'm happy about, is not to overbuild it, because we don't want to draw in a bunch of people downtown to go to the baseball stadium and have them park, walk across the street, park and leave. You know, we want people to visit our downtown restaurants and bars and things like that. So I just hope that the parking is dispersed. People are still using the A&E deck and University Plaza. That way there's foot traffic, and we accomplish what I think we are all hoping that the stadium accomplishes.
And I think that's also part of the design of the stadium, is to try and disperse it, you know, from teams coming in, whether there's a bus, parking, and all that kind of stuff. And so we're going to learn some of this as we go. But I think having different places, not just one particular spot, but, you know, the last study was, what'd you say, 2011 or 2012?
Something like that, yeah.
So it needs to be updated and revisited, and just with designs nowadays, sometimes you can see some pretty nice looking parking decks with art on them possibly, you know, to tie in with the cultural trail theme. And I know that's a high, you know, important thing with, you know, the design of the stadium too, and it will be, but just kind of tied in with everything else.
There's a balance there. We want to make sure we provide enough, but not too much, as you just described. So that's why I like to do this quick analysis, get that done, then we'll put the RFP out for architectural services and get it rolling.
You guys go with that?
I'm good.
Yep.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
Next, from the strategic planning, we have Sean Griffith from the Hagerstown Housing Authority. Sean, I appreciate you being here today. I know we spoke on the phone, just a little bit of background. As you are aware, we did a community survey. Our community identified several issues that they saw, and I thought it would be important to bring you in to discuss, not only to the council, but to the public, what it is the Hagerstown Housing Authority does, the important role that you play in our community, and just provide some information on housing in general. So appreciate you being here today.
No, thanks for having me. Anytime you guys want to learn something more about what we're doing, any projects we have going on, we're more than happy to come in. So I put together a slide presentation here that kind of talks a little bit about what you just mentioned. So there's about 40 slides. I'm not going to touch on every one of them, but I think some of it is probably good information for you to have. And if there is something you want me to spend more time on, I'll be happy to do that. And if you have any questions, just interrupt. Very informal. I want to make sure any questions you guys have, we are able to get those answered. So just a little bit about the Housing Authority, our mission. Basically, we provide affordable housing in a safe environment while trying to promote self-sufficiency opportunities to our residents. That's been the mission for a while, and it still fits. We were established in 1949 by a resolution from mayor and council. They saw the need was there for affordable housing in the city of Hagerstown. So even though we are not a department of the city, the mayor does.
Can you say that again? Can you
I-
please say that again?
We are not a department of the city of Hagerstown. But the mayor does appoint our 5-member board. Okay, just a couple things here. We have about 85 employees. That number fluctuates. We're a little bit down right now. We're having a hard time finding maintenance mechanics. Doesn't seem like anybody wants to go into that field anymore, or whatever the case may be. But I also wanted to point out, we do have a resident services department and a security department. I'll touch on those in a little bit here. All right, so kind of what I wanted to talk about today is our wait list and admissions. We get a lot of calls about, I've been on the list, why am I not getting housed? So I kind of wanted to explain a little bit how that works, and then talk about our core programs. The Housing Choice Voucher Program, also known as Section 8. I prefer the term Housing Choice Voucher because what Section 8 is actually what they call the funding for that program. Public housing is actually Section 9. But then I also want to talk about public housing, our self-sufficiency program, and our new developments, the tax credit properties. All right, so just recently we changed our wait list. We had 3 main wait lists: low rent, family, low rent elderly, and housing choice voucher. We also have some spinoffs for Gateway, now McCleary Hill. But we recently changed those to be site-based. So when people apply to our wait list, if they want to move into McCleary Hill, they don't have to apply, to all of our properties. They can pick which properties they'd like to live in, which actually helps streamline things for us and makes it easier for the applicants as well, because we're not offering them units in places they don't want to live. As you can see here, these numbers are a little old, but pretty darn close. We've got about 6,500 total families on our list, and I say total families, there could be some duplication between the various waitlist programs. So somebody could be on the low rent and the housing choice voucher wait list. I didn't want to count them twice. So about 6,500 unique individual families are on one of our waiting lists. Yes.
Just 2 questions on that. The first is there a time frame or a duration in which you are on the wait list before you, I don't know if you purge the list a certain number of times a year or so many years or what?
So we just purged the wait list not too long ago. And once we purge it, it jumps right back up. Mostly the purges are people that are at the bottom of the list that have been there for a good period of time, and those are primarily people that do not live in Washington County, because they don't get the preference points that a local resident would get. So we find most of them tend to drop off when we do the purge, but as soon as we do the purge, we get bombarded again with applications. So to answer your question, I think there really isn't, we really can't define how long you'll be on the list, because it really depends on turnovers and things like that, and where you are on the list. As an example here, I think this next slide kind of gives the preferences here. First off, it's by date and time. If you're a local resident, you get 20 points, which bumps you above everybody else. If you're elderly or disabled, you get 5, and if you're working, you get another 5. So if you apply and you're working, you're a local, and you're elderly or disabled, you're going to go to the top of the list before anybody else.
Do you offer people average estimated wait time?
The elderly sites, Potomac Towers, Walnut Towers, we seem to have more turnover on them. I would say on those, we're looking at a couple years probably, potentially, maybe a year if they're lucky. The family sites are a lot longer. One of the things we find too is we have very few 1-bedroom units, so our 1-bedroom list is just huge and people just don't move. If you're looking at a 2 or 3 bedroom, we're able to usually turn those around a little bit quicker, and we're still looking at probably a few years before you get to the top of the list and get pulled.
I think that's important for the public to hear.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's not quick, and we do not have emergency housing. All right, so basically, just quick here. Basically, we pull them for eligibility based on their current waitlist rank. Once we pull them, we start with a phone interview just to make sure they're initially eligible. We have to make sure they stay within the income limits for that particular program. We verify they're a U.S. citizen, eligible immigrant. They cannot have been evicted from public housing. If they have been, they need to have made good on whatever that eviction was in order to be brought back in the program, and they cannot owe another housing authority money and move into one of our units, any housing authority. HUD does keep a centralized database of all of the public housing authorities, and anybody that leaves a housing authority owing debt, and we have access to that. These are the income limits. Don't know if you can see it. I know I can't, but they are in the packet for each program. So I just want to take a step back here, and I will identify this in the Housing Choice Voucher Program when we talk about the public housing program as well. But one of the things we do prior to offering anybody a unit or issuing a voucher is we do very extensive background checks. In some cases, those background checks do involve fingerprinting. We have our own fingerprinting system that security knows how to use, and if people come in and there's a question as to the background, we will run fingerprints on them. So basically a housing choice voucher at a high level, this is a definition, I can't remember where I pulled it from, probably Google or something. But basically what the housing choice voucher program is it gives the residents the ability to basically live wherever they want. Public housing, the housing authority owns and manages those properties. So we have a specific communities that people have to live in. With the housing choice voucher, they can basically take that voucher, go wherever they want to go, and live at a private residence, private landlord, or with a private landlord.
And a landlord is not able to reject them, is that correct?
Well, there's a lot of rumors going about that. There is a law that's come up periodically in the state of Maryland where you cannot deny somebody for a voucher. And basically what that is they're saying if you tell somebody they cannot move into your unit because of their source of income, that is the reasoning. So it's really, they're considering discriminating against somebody because of their source of income, which would be the voucher, is not a reason to deny them, or you're not allowed to deny them. That has not passed yet, but if, let's just say you have a voucher and I don't, and I have a better credit score than you, and you have something else they don't like, they can choose me over you with the voucher. I mean, the landlords can screen a voucher participant like they do any other participant they have.
If the housing authority provides the voucher and the voucher goes to a private home, does the housing authority have any inspection authority over that private home, or are you only able to do that with housing authority homes?
So if it's a housing choice voucher and they reside in a unit, we do what we call the initial inspection. The initial inspection of the unit consists of HUD standards and city standards, because the city will take our inspection in lieu of having somebody from the city come out for that.
Right.
And then we do go out, it was every year, now it's every 2 years to do a re-inspect, and we do hold the tenant and landlord accountable for any repairs. So if it's a tenant caused damage, the tenant is responsible for fixing those damage, landlord's responsible for fixing those.
If there's a tenant turnover before the 2-year period is up and it's a housing choice voucher, is there an inspection done at turnover?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Yep. At initial lease up, we are required to go out there and inspect that unit.
Gotcha.
So just real quick, a couple of the programs under the voucher program. Tenant-based is just your normal voucher. You get it, you go live where you want. VASH is veteran, 59 allocated for veterans. We work with the VA on that. Mod Rehab, 16 units located up on Jonathan Street. 811 Bridge is a state program for people coming out with mental health issues. We currently don't have any in the city of Hagerstown that are utilizing that program right now. Ready by 21, youth aging out of foster care. We work with the Department of Social Services for that program, and last I checked, we did not have anybody housed under that program either. So in total, we manage 943 housing choice vouchers. Some of those float back into tenant-based. All right, so basically what happens is, once we deem them eligible, a voucher is issued. Basically, the tenant goes out, they're responsible for finding their own unit. That is proven to be a problem for us right now. Like I said, we have 943 vouchers that we are capable of administering. Once COVID hit, that number has dropped way down. And we've got about 150 vouchers on the street right now, and people just cannot find houses that are vacant because of the eviction moratorium. I guess landlords aren't kicking the people out at this point. And also too, because we're just not able to get them to pass inspection. So it's been a little bit of a struggle with the voucher program. We're issuing about 150 vouchers a month, and we're having a very low success rate. Basically then, tenant selects the unit. All that information comes back to us. We look at the unit to make sure it meets rent reasonableness, it can be on the program. We conduct the inspection, and then we have what we call a HAP contract, Housing Authority Payment Contract, which is executed between the housing authority, landlord, and tenant. Just basically showing here that the tenant will pay 30% of their adjusted monthly income. The housing authority pays the difference. So people in the Housing Choice Voucher Program will only pay, as is public housing, 30% of their adjusted gross income. So the housing authority obligation for this program, we do a criminal background check, and again, the landlord should also do their own. We provide the landlord information on previous landlords, so they can do their own screening. We pay the landlord on the first of every month. We certify the family annually, verify their income, things like that. Inspect the dwelling unit currently now every 2 years, and determine what the tenant's portion of rent is.
Can you elaborate on the criminal background, like what would be considered ineligible for this program?
Federal law, we are not allowed to house anybody that's manufacturing of CDS or a registered sex offender. Those right there, just right off the bat, we are not allowed to house those ever. Criminal background check, if you had a second-degree assault, let's say 2 years ago, we would probably overlook that. If you had 20 second-degree assaults over the course of the last, year, we would take that into account as well. So a lot of times it's on a case-by-case basis, just depending upon the frequency of the crimes. And we understand people make mistakes. DUI, we're not going to do anything for that. So it probably the best way I can answer your question.
Thank you.
So the tenant is responsible for complying with the lease, pay rent, correct any damages to the dwelling unit, not allow people that aren't on the lease to be living there, report any changes to their income or family size to us, give proper notice to the landlord when vacating, again, no criminal or drug activities. Probably a little repetitive when we get into the public housing side, but we do have a close working relationship with the Hagerstown Police Department. Anything that occurs on our properties, we get every morning, so we know, as well as the Section 8 program, what's going on out there. So if something does happen, we are made aware and we can act quickly. Okay, so that was a little bit about the Housing Choice Voucher. Do you have any questions about that program? All right, so public housing is again, somewhat similar but different. The difference is we, the housing authority, are the owners and managers of the property. Basically what happens is when they come to the top of the list, they're approved, we offer them a unit, we do a pre-move-in inspection, tenant signs a lease, pays security deposit, and whatever prorated rent they have. Again, 30% of the adjusted income is what they pay, or 80% of the fair market rent. So back in the day, housing authorities would basically charge $100 in rent, get the rest of the subsidy from HUD, and not increase it. So HUD put 80% of the fair market rent out there, that if the tenant's income is over that, they could choose fair market rent. At least that way they're kind of paying, the fair market, and it's not utilizing any subsidies. Again, criminal background check, UAP check. If a person has zero income in some cases and they're responsible for the utilities, the housing authority will reimburse them for some of their utilities. We do inspect those units as well as HUD also comes in and will inspect our units. We determine rent annually and maintain the unit to high standards. And that's the one thing, HUD comes out and we get great scores every year, which is very unheard of for public housing. The tenant obligation, again, they have to comply with their lease, pay their rent and utilities. Again, we hold our tenants accountable for any damages that they create as well. Not allow unauthorized persons to be living in the unit. That's probably one of the biggest problems that we have, and I think a lot of private landlords have as well, is people living in the units off the lease, and typically those individuals are the ones that end up causing a lot of the problems for the tenants. Reporting rent changes, give us notice, and again, no criminal or drug activity. We do monitor that on a daily basis.
Hey, Sean.
Yes.
So if a tenant doesn't comply with one or multiple of those requirements, what are the ramifications?
You might have to show me how, never mind, I got it here. So if a tenant doesn't comply, there's a couple of different things that happen, potentially. It depends on what it is. So let's just say it's a failure to recertify. We send multiple letters. You don't respond, you don't come in. What we may do, and what we will do, is issue a notice of lease termination.
Okay.
You haven't complied with your lease, and here's the reason why. And at that point, then the tenant has basically 3 steps beyond that. They can request an informal conference with the housing authority. Basically, they come in and they meet with somebody. We try to work through the issue, okay? In that case, just get recertified and it's done. If it's not able to be resolved there, it goes to a formal, which is typically with me. We sit down, we go over the situation, try to figure out if we can resolve it. If we can't resolve it from there, ultimately their last step is to go to court, and the judge is the only one that can say, you've got to move out of that unit or not. In some cases, for severe criminal activity, when it's a threat to health and safety in the community or other residents or even staff, we will issue a 14-day notice. We bypass the whole grievance procedure and we go right to court.
Okay. So it's not an immediate eviction notice?
No, it's a process, and again, unless it's health and safety, I mean, typically it's a 30-day notice that we send on a lease termination. A 14-day notice we rarely do, but again, we speed the process up for that. So again, before we get out of the public housing program, I just want to kind of list out a couple of, these are a few of many improvements that we're doing. Miscellaneous upgrades throughout all of our communities. A lot of that's concrete work, lighting, exterior doors, things like that, just things that are on the exterior, fencing. Community room and sky deck, I'm really excited about that. We noticed the floors are starting to go. We've had a lot of leaks in there, and the ceiling was looking bad. It was really starting to look shoddy. We just had brand new floors put in, modernized in the community room, also up on the sky deck. We're doing all new ceilings, just sprucing it up to make it look a lot nicer, not like it was built in 1970s. We just replaced all the roofs on our scattered sites. We're also be replacing the siding here in the very near future and gutter systems. Upgraded door locks at Walnut Towers, similar to what we did at Potomac Towers, just make it a little bit more secure, prevent lockouts. And the other one, which recently came to our attention, is we knew we didn't have a generator at Elgin Station, but recently it's been causing a lot of problems. We've been having a lot of power outages on the west end, and what it's been doing is calling the fire department every time we have a power outage. So the fire department goes out to Elgin every time we lose power. So we did reach out to an engineer. We are in the process of procuring a generator that will hook up so that way that we can stop that problem from happening. A couple security enhancements we've done or in the process of doing. We've just added 42 new cameras, primarily in Potomac Towers in our admin building, which has been great, a great tool for security and maintenance as well. We've got 20 cameras over at McCleary Hill currently. HPD will have access to those. We just need to get our IT person coordinated with them to make sure they get proper access, but they will also have access to all those cameras. We applied for a grant with HUD, which would allow us to put in additional new cameras at Walnut, Brooks Building, and also put a perimeter fencing around the admin building property. When I say that, around Potomac Towers and CW Brooks. And the reason is we've been having a lot of Cadillac converters stolen from back there at night, and just people coming in off the street, and it's kind of been a nightmare. The other thing is we are working with the Hagerstown Police Department to where the housing authority would actually buy cameras, allow them to put them on their networks. And we are looking to do that right now at Park Place, Suman, and Gateway. So where we would purchase them, hand those over to HPD, and have a little more visual out there in those areas as well. The Family Self-Sufficiency Program, we have a resident service department that does a lot more than just FSS. They work with the residents. The residents need help filling out paperwork, doing various things. Resident Service Department will meet with them and help them with that. One area I wanted to talk about, though, is the FSS program. It's a 5-year voluntary program. Basically, what it's really designed to do is create case management for the residents, help them achieve goals to become self-sufficient. These numbers are a little dated, but currently we have about 128 people in the program. I have 118 graduates. I know I've just met with 3 graduates over the last 2 weeks, so that number is a little bit low at this point. 21% of the graduates from this program actually become homeowners, go out to buy homes. And just kind of show you some rough numbers, beginning income on somebody from the program is about $3,000, ending is about $22,000. That's average. We've seen a lot higher. We've also seen some lower. It really just depends on what the resident's looking to do. Here's just a quick list of some of the things that our residents have accomplished. Home ownership, CNAs, bachelor's degree, in some cases master's degrees. So it's a tough program. Again, it's 5 years, it's very intense, and it's good to see people participating and they're able to graduate.
I know one of your graduates is currently opening a business in our downtown.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, I did not know. I think I knew that. That's excellent. So there you go, another success story.
Yes.
So the future of public housing. So I think I've mentioned this to you all before, but I just kind of want to go back over it again. Housing authorities have been underfunded for a number of years. When HUD comes out with the budget, they're averaging anywhere from 83 to 89% of the needed operating funds are being provided to housing authorities, and capital funds are shrinking. So really what that means is housing authorities have to do more with less. The capital funds are basically the only funds we have available to us to do huge capital repairs on our developments. I think I've mentioned to some of you before, let's just take Nolan Village as an example. If a roof goes up, I don't have any money, I can't go take out a loan because it's public housing. I can only use capital fund or operating fund for any public housing repairs. HUD is currently estimated, and this number is 10 years old, they haven't done another study, but about $12 billion in total capital needs across the country for public housing. It's just they just don't have the funds to be able to pump into that. And the problem again is, even if they do pump it in, and in 2 years I have a roof problem, I can't go take out a loan because it is public housing. So HUD is looking for creative ways, or housing authorities looking for creative ways to redevelop, and I'll talk about McCleary Hill in just a minute here. But again, just a couple pictures I found before and after. This is Gateway Crossing, Landville and Elgin, and the C.W. Brooks building. We can't take credit for that pretty mural. That was the city that did that one. But the reason I wanted to mention these two is these are a little bit different than what we are currently doing at McCleary Hill and proposing to do over at Nolan Village. Let me take a step back. Gateway Crossing is a total of 290 units. 140 of those units, which I'll show you on the last slide, are public housing. Okay, those are still public housing. The other 150 are tax credit, which are basically income restricted. We do not receive any subsidy for those. The Brooks building also utilized tax credits as well, like Gateway, and that is 60 units of public housing. Okay, so it still remains subsidy, public housing subsidy. Moving forward, HUD is looking to get rid of public housing subsidy as new developments occur. And that is where the Rad program comes in, which is a rental assistance demonstration program. And this is what we've used at McCleary Hill. What it does is basically takes away capital funds and operating funds provided by HUD to the housing authority and creates it more of like the Section 8 type of program. So each unit, as an example at McCleary Hill, is receiving subsidy from a voucher perspective. We're not getting capital funds, we're not getting operating funds, okay? It's what they call a project-based voucher. So the tenant pays 30%, we go to HUD and say, okay, we need the other 70, HUD will reimburse us for that to get the rent amounts where they need to be. So that's kind of the difference, and the nice part about that is the housing authority is a partial owner with the Delaware Valley as well as the banks. You know, they hold the mortgage until we pay it off. But later down the road, the housing authority will have the ability to acquire it, just like we did Gateway Crossing. We had Penrose as our developer partner about 2 years ago. We bought them out, and it's now solely owned by the Hagerstown Housing Authority. So, again, real quick, Nolan Village, 250 units built in 1972, turnkey barrack style. What that means is back in the day, HUD would say, hey, look, we need 250 public housing units in Hagerstown. You go build it. There was no oversight by anybody, no real direction, and they were built very poorly, especially in the 70s. We noticed that. So basically, they are becoming, if not already, functionally obsolete, so we need to take action quick. Currently now, we are looking at a 3-phase full redevelopment of Nolan Village. 2 phases off-site at McCleary Hill. I think everybody probably knows where that is. 131 replacement units. 1 phase at Nolan Village, which we will be calling Martin Heights, will replace 116 units. If you notice, those two numbers don't add up to 250. We're about 3 short. The reason is when we went to pick which units at Nolan Village we were going to put into phase 1, we were trying to do strategic selection in case we ended up there having to do some rehab just to give the community a new look. HUD said, no, we didn't want you to do that. We're already so far in. They said you have to go court by court. So we ended up losing 3 subsidized units because of that. So actually, we lost public housing units. So between the two phases, we're looking at over 30 million in infrastructure. Phase 1 will consist of 61 affordable housing units, 7 market rate, approximately 6 home ownership. Phase 2 will consist of 70 affordable, and I say affordable, replacement housing for Nolan using the new subsidy, 9 units of market rate, and home ownership units. Local vendor used for development, that was a former board member, Dick McCleary. He was a big advocate of using local contractors for this development, and that's what we did. So a quick site plan, I think most of you are familiar. The side to the left is phase 1, that is fully leased. Side to the right is phase 2. We are in process now. We anticipate full lease up of phase 2 within second quarter 2022. Right now, as with everywhere, lumber prices are through the roof. We just bought, before we would buy all the lumber at one time, we decided just to hold off, hope they come down. So we bought about 20% of the lumber for phase 2, and that was at an excess of $450,000 from what we budgeted. So overall, if the lumber prices don't come down, we're looking at nearly $2 million overage in just lumber alone. But we are moving forward, and it's a shame. But we anticipate full lease up second quarter of 2022 for phase 2. So with that being said, I'm going to jump over to Nolan Village, and I labeled it here Martin Heights because that will be the name after we redevelop it. I don't think a lot of you have seen this yet. We do plan, I think I messed up on one of the slides in here where I said we're going to go to the state, we're actually going to come to the city. But we applied last year for funding for Nolan Village. It was a competitive tax credit, which we called what is a twin deal, which is a combination of 4% and 9% tax credits. They had a lot of applications in. We were not successful. We had an exit conversation with the state. We kind of looked over the financing structure of what we proposed. The financing structure is stable, and it looks like it will, in fact, the state said it will work with 4% bonds, which are non-competitive. So now we're pretty comfortable that we can move forward with our plan at Nolan Village and get it all done in one phase. So there will not be a fourth phase out there. So again, I like kind of a repeat from the slide. Phase 3 will consist of 116 affordable units, which again will be more of the voucher type of subsidy, 12 market rates, and potential for home ownership opportunities out there. It's actually going to consist of 80 units that will be substantially rehabbed, and I say substantially rehabbed down to the studs, keep the concrete slab, hopefully keep some of the exterior brick, but the whole interior layout's gonna be totally different. I mean, right now they don't even have half baths on any of the lower levels. Those will be in there, and they're really gonna look a lot like McCleary Hill. So I wanted to point this out. It's kind of hard to see here, but this is actually the Nolan Village currently. Is there a pointer on this? So that's pretty cool, actually. There's Court 1. And there's Court 2. Those are actually totally empty at this point. I'm sure you probably saw in the news, fire department, police department, but then they're having a lot of fun blowing the places up and starting fires. Those we're hoping to have demolished in September. We just had a meeting with the attorneys, and there's a lot of red tape involved. Apparently HUD is kind of throwing some wrenches at us to get those demolished. So I'm still shooting for September, but that might be kicked down the road maybe another month or so just to get through some of that red tape. Court 4 and 6 were the ones that were designated for phase 2, McCleary Hill. Again, probably in second quarter of 2022, those will be fully demolished, and we look to then begin, hopefully, the redevelopment out there. The buildings, I don't know if you can tell, kind of to the north side, there's some of them that are darker color and some of them that are white. The ones that are darker color will be select demolition. That's what we're proposing for select demolition. So they'll, pretty much to keep it simple, the end buildings in each court will come out. The one thing that you're not going to see in this diagram is the structure of the court, the shape is also going to change, just to make it look a little cleaner. And again, that's not in this diagram, but this is kind of right now what we're proposing for the phase 3 over at Martin Heights. Again, select demolition to the north, and to the top left corner, those will be sticks that are currently there, again, substantially rehabbed, and 2 buildings, I'm trying, right up in here, which will be kind of apartment buildings. I got a picture of them here in a minute. 2 buildings, 24 units each, total of 48. that's kind of a general look of what it will look like. Front porches, get rid of those metal gates. New siding, we're gonna try to keep the brick. Like we had the stone out in Clear Hill, it'll probably be brick out here. So again, substantial rehab. And that's kind of the look of the new construction, 2 buildings, 24 units each. And again, we're hoping to get something to the city here in August, so we can start the review process with that.
I have a question, and forgive me if you already answered this in your tenure regarding Nolan and McCleary Hill, but for the tenants that are there, are they the first come, first served to be in the new units, or is it a whole new process for applications?
So HUD has a very strict rules on relocation. Every resident in Nolan Village, they say, has a right to return. A right to return to the new property, or the right to return to Nolan Village. So basically HUD said these units are phase 1 of McCleary Hill. Those tenants at Nolan Village have to be offered a unit at McCleary Hill. So we can't say, you know, hey, Sean, I don't like you anymore. You can't move there. You got to move somewhere else. We cannot do that. They all have the right to return to a new unit in the new development. Very good question. And this is kind of the last slide here I wanted to point out. The number here is a little deceiving. I have the number of subsidized units, 1,417. That number is actually not excluding Nolan Village. It's still standing. I left it. That number will shrink by 250. And I say subsidized, that includes the project-based vouchers. We also have another 182 units that we did not receive subsidy for that we own and manage. So currently, we're responsible for 1,599 units in our portfolio. Again, that number will shrink by 250 once we tear down Nolan Village. So there's some repetitive numbers in there, but still standing. I didn't want to try to skew the numbers. And that's my last slide, and I think the last one says, any questions?
Questions for Sean?
Covered it, thank you.
Chris?
Yep. Just a couple of comments really quick.
Sure.
The first is, for those, I think that have some misconception over sort of what the housing authority is, what its role is, you know, how it functions within the community. I will say this, and I'll be the first to admit that throughout my tenure here in this position, I've certainly been ignorant at times of, you know, having that awareness and that necessary awareness to the fact that of these following points. The first is the housing authority is clearly a necessity within this community. I think a function of that type of organization, your type of organization, is a necessity within all medium to large urban communities in order for citizens to be fully and properly served. And the second is, now that I've had some time to serve as liaison to the Housing Authority, like you might expect, it does not function perfectly, but it functions much better than a good deal of private stock that is out on the market. And that's because of the third fact, and that is the Housing Authority is a highly accountable entity within the community. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think that misconception is out there. You ride by an apartment somewhere and you know, you make the comment that's a housing authority place, and the reality is, sitting through the many meetings with the organization and seeing that level of accountability, that there's a 99% chance that it's just not, and that it has no affiliation with the housing authority or any of your operations, you know, because of the level of accountability that you, frankly, are beholden to the responsibility of and you know, want to provide in the community. And so, you know, that for me has been a very good part of the learning experience, and I enjoy sitting on the board and seeing, you know, your operations. I will say, however, just as well, you know, and I think that these numbers are important because I say it all the time, when we have this discussion, and I think people get the misconception that I am somehow opposed to the notion of subsidized housing and public housing in any form thereof, but here's the reality. You know, in this information, it's a little dated, but I have 904 for the number of choice housing vouchers, and you said 943. But here's something I think that is important to convey to the region, to the state, to the broader community. The fact that Hagerstown is doing much more than its fair share as it relates to its total population base comparative to our jurisdictional neighbors. Because in Hagerstown, the total number of units within those categories make up about 3,000 units. And in Cumberland, they make up about 1,400, and in Frederick, they make up about 1,500. So our neighbors to the west, that are half our population, and our neighbors to the east, that are double our population, we have more combined than those two jurisdictions together in total. Not only do we have more combined, we have double those two total, but we actually have more in the city of Hagerstown than Frederick County, who has a population of about 6 to 7 times ours, has in its entire county. We have nearly 3 times as many as you will find outside of the city limits in the rest of Washington County. And if you look at our waiting list and you cite the number of 6,500, I believe back when these numbers were taken, it was about 5,800. So that number grows over time, and you
Grows
can
and shrinks up and down.
But when you look at those other jurisdictional entities like Frederick and some of the other comparative urban centers within the state, they're in the hundreds. They're not in the multitudes of thousands. They're in the hundreds, and they curb that from time to time. And so I just think that those two facets for me are important to be aware of through this process. That one, this is a very necessary and good organization that provides a necessary function of our municipality. And two, we need to be proportionally sized within the grand scheme of that necessary provision as it relates to the region. We can't have in the city of Hagerstown nearly double the same amount you'll find in the entire eastern panhandle of West Virginia. It just, there has to be a balance. And so I appreciate the level of accountability the organization brings to your operation here in our city for the larger than proportionate size of housing that you provide comparative to the other jurisdictional entities around us.
I just want to add something to your comment, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Kristen. But I just want to add something as an example. I spent years working at Annapolis Housing Authority as an employee and as a consultant. And this is kind of what I want to say. I'm not sure if Frederick's the same or not, but they have about as many public housing units in Annapolis as we do here. But when you go to the Housing Authority website and look, they've redeveloped 3 of their properties currently and has taken basically ownership away from them. They don't manage them. So that would be like me saying Brooks, Gateway, McCleary Hill, and Martin Heights would be off of this list if we didn't manage them. So even though Annapolis has as many public housing, they're not housing authority associated with. So the numbers look skewed when you see that. I just want to make that statement.
I think that's good. I think it's critical, at least for me, that you are the entity that does manage those things, because I believe that responsibility rests better in that singular organizational impact.
Appreciate that.
Can I ask where you came up with the 3,000 number?
Some sheet I got from some time ago.
And 3,000 encompasses that 14, 17, and,
Well, actually, it would be the 14, 17. To be fair, then you subtract 250 from that for Nolan Village, because
Right.
there's some duplication in there.
yeah.
And then you add 943 to that for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. That would be the number I think he's getting at.
Okay. No, well, I appreciate you coming. I know several years ago, our previous chief had done a presentation to us about crime numbers, and there's always concern that public housing has higher crime numbers, and it was interesting to me, newly elected back in 16 or 17, that the numbers, crime numbers in your areas that you operate were actually lower than in other places of the city. And I think that's a gigantic misconception, which is part of the reason I wanted you to come here today, because we always hear, remove Section 8, remove public housing. tearing down our city, there's crime, but if you look at the actual statistics, it's not necessarily the case.
And I get a lot of calls from the community complaining about a Section 8 person that lives next door to them or down the street. And when we look into it, they are not a housing choice voucher participant. In fact, I got a call from the city about 2 weeks ago, or an email saying, is this your person? We're getting complaints, and it wasn't. But the person that called it in swore up and down they were housing choice voucher participants. So again, you can't drive down the street and say that's housing choice voucher, that's housing, or that's, you just can't do it.
Sean, I do have one question for you, just to clarify something. You're not out there advertising in Baltimore and places like that to come live in Hagerstown and utilize our subsidized housing programs, are you?
No, we are not. We don't do any advertising.
I mean, we hear that all the time.
I know.
We hear it all the
I
time.
mean,
It's
it wasn't
all
I
true.
think my
surveys.
predecessor
It wasn't
did
true
it.
10 years ago, it's
I know.
not true today.
Yeah.
Yeah, my predecessor, I think, did it a while back, and it has not happened since then.
Well, thank you for this presentation. This is helpful,
Good.
especially for us coming in. Yeah, we get emails and calls and stuff, so now we can have a resource to answer our constituents' questions.
And I think you guys all have my cell phone number, so if you ever need anything, feel free to reach out.
Can I ask a question about security?
Sure.
Does one security secure like all of them, or is it one security for Jonathan Street, Nolan? Like how's your security work?
So it's kind of a rotating shift. So we only have a staff of 7 total for security. 3 of those are during the day. So we rotate them, especially if, there's something going on in one of the communities we want to keep an eye on. We may push somebody out there a little bit longer than normal. So it is kind of a rotation, and we really don't say that Shaw's going to be at Nolan Village between 8 and 12 because we don't want anybody to know we're going to be there. So it's kind of a fluctuating schedule with different people at different times.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. We
All right, thank
appreciate
you, I
it.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sean.
All right.
Up next, my favorite part, preliminary agenda review. If you have any questions, stop me. We have a regular session next week. We'll call it to order at 7 o'clock, have an invocation, the pledge, announcements. We have 2 appointments to the Planning Commission, Michael Gear and Ronald Thomas. Oh, okay. All right, Doug Wright and Ronald Thomas to the Planning Commission, Joe Jefferson to the Ethics Commission. We'll have citizen comments. You can come in person or submit them to councilcomments@hagerstownmd.org no later than 5 p.m. on Tuesday. We'll approve the minutes from June 8th, 15th, 22nd. The consent agenda for IT, we have VX Rail 5th server node for $33,148.24. Venable Nessus vulnerability management tool for $13,096.11. For engineering, a change order for on-call services during final implementation of the stormwater utility for not to exceed $20,000. Design a retrofit of MKS Business Park stormwater basin for $47,100. Replace a sidewalk and stabilized bank along Payneborn Boulevard for $161,295. For HR, we have liability and property insurance through Legit for $479,211. Utilities, electric, reconditioned substation transformer for $86,000. Water double check detector assemblies for $53,134.56. Water emergency repair of the MAC water tank for $74,830. Programmable logic controller upgrade for $52,580.97. RCW water plant filter removal and replacement for $619,265. And submersible pumps for $31,260. Under unfinished business, we have approval of ordinance to amend the code of the City of Hagerstown, Chapter 10, entitled Administration of the Government to add Article XV Hagerstown Youth Council. Under new business, we have approval of resolution, technical assistance and maintenance agreement with Hub Parking Technology. Approval of a resolution for the parking lease for central parking lot with the State of Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation. Approval of a resolution parking lease for University District Parking Deck with the State of Maryland District Court of Maryland. again. Take C off. D, we have approval of a resolution, execution of a lease agreement between the City of Hagerstown and Goshen Investment Properties for a portion of the City of Hagerstown property known as Borough Box, located at 60 West Washington Street. We have approval of Invest Hagerstown City Center redevelopment grant application for 17-21 East Franklin Street, WLR Residential Properties, Inc. Approval of funding to Aries Investment Group LLC for Hamilton Hotel Building Stabilization Project at 8698 West Washington Street. Approval of the public art projects. Approval of temporary grant coordinator position. Approval of guidelines and application for the CDBG Micro Enterprise Grant Program. And approval of fiscal year 22 Invest Hagerstown Grant Program funding levels. City Administrator comments, Mayor Council comments will be done. Any questions? All right. Next we have public art projects. Rodney.
The Public Art Commission has been meeting again since the pandemic has lessened, and they have several recommendations for you. I just wanted to go through quickly and review with you. So the first one is the last phase of the cultural trail that we're currently building right now. In the space that's between the county building and what I call the bead building, the commission is recommending that we put aerial art in there that would define that space where the trail is cutting through there. We worked with the Arts Council, they did a call, and the commission is recommending Mark Schwenk, who is in the back, an artist from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, that he has put together a really interesting design that I've put in your packet. It's an array of multicolored aluminum sculptures that will be hung over that space in an arc, and the sculptures are flowers and butterflies, and that when the bead building redevelops, that could really be an incredibly interesting space with this art added to that. The art will be suspended by 4 poles that we have that we're going to recycle for that particular use, and that funding for that is in the project for the cultural trail. It's already been approved by you a few months back. The second project, John Barr has been a tremendous advocate and financial contributor to the many pieces of cultural or arts that are on the cultural trail, and he has created another opportunity for us if we'd like to take it, and that is down on Lee Street. As you're walking down the cultural trail and you're passing his business and you get to Lee Street and you have to make a hard right to go to City Park, he has constructed the wall and the screen that is shown in the packet for potentially having some sort of public art on that. Rather than doing a call, I contacted the Maryland State Arts Council for recommendations, since this isn't really a big budget project, and they recommended Carol Jarvis and Gregory Gannon, who have submitted this design for adding these this pattern on that screen. John is very supportive of it, and if you approve, we would like to set up an artist agreement with them to have these installed later this year. Faces of Hagerstown, and when we put those up in 2017, we were hoping to update them every 3 years or so. With the pandemic, we had a call out, but there really wasn't much interest last year, obviously. So the call's been extended to October 1st, so if you know photographers out there that would like to have their work displayed on the cultural trail, this is an opportunity for them to submit to the Arts Council. A jury will select the pictures, and then we'll either replace the ones that are along the Herald Mail, or we will probably install some new ones on a fence beside the district court. So it's an opportunity for photographers. Last time we got almost 400 entries, so I really hope that we could get that kind of volume of entries again. And then the last thing is the Colorblind mural on West Washington Street. It is really deteriorated. It wasn't anything that was commissioned, an artist wasn't commissioned, it was put in there in the 1990s by what I understand were school children working with the city. The mural was deteriorated probably beyond saving it, and the quality of it I'm not sure is worth saving it. What I'd like to see us do, and what the commission would like to see us do, is put another type of mural there that seeks to strengthen the message that we want to have there of tolerance and inclusion. And what we are recommending is not putting anything on the bridge abutment, the concrete itself, but putting a panel in front of it that's 40 feet long and 8 feet high, and having a new mural painted on that. The nice thing about that is those panels could be painted in someone's studio and then installed in the field. So what we're doing, what we would recommend to you there is a call for an artist through the Arts Council again. We would advocate that artists get community input and put together a design that you would bless, and then we would submit it for a Public Art Across Maryland grant to install it next spring. Those are all the recommendations from the Public Art Commission. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
That mural by HPD was the very first thing I ever asked to do when I got elected in 2016, so I'm yes, finally, yes. I love all of this. This is great.
Would the lighting be improved throughout all of these different projects or trails? Just to
Yes.
highlight, I don't want it to be dark and then we can't even see the beautiful artwork.
That's a good question. So Mark's project, he's planning on putting LED lights at the top of the poles and illuminating the aerial sculpture from that elevation. For John Barr's screens, he's placed lights that basically shine down on the light, so it'll be very visible at night. The faces are not illuminated. And then this mural that we would propose to put on Washington Street, we would upgrade the lighting there under the bridge, similar to what we did when we did the student art on Franklin Street. It would be just duplicated over on Washington Street.
Nice. That will help with safety too. I'm excited.
You guys good?
Sure. Very good.
Thank you for coming today. All right, up next we have the Historic City Farmers Market update. Kitty Clark and Kathleen Miller.
Kitty from the city.
Hi, gang. So, yes, we're here to provide an update on the market. First, I want to introduce you to Kathleen Miller, because I don't think there's ever been an official introduction, even though she has now been the Farmers Market Coordinator for almost 1 year.
2 more weeks, 1 year.
Yeah, so we're here just to give an update. Kathleen's going to give the interesting update, and then we will move on to a discussion about whether or not to reinstate vendor fees. So I'm just going to have Kathleen jump in.
Thank you, Kitty. Good evening. Nice to meet everyone. So I think everyone knows where our farmers market is on 25 West Church Street. We currently have 25 vendors, and the vendors are selling a variety of goods, anywhere from your prepared food, baked goods, teas, produce, meats and cheese. We have a microgreens vendor, preserves, jams, candles, jewelry, pillows, other handcrafted items, seasonings, and one of our vendors is soon to add pottery and mushrooms to their table. We've had special events. I started in August, so we had a Fall Fest in September, and we've had several events since then. We had a Fall Fest where we gave out goodie bags with pumpkins for the children. We had Christmas at the market with Santa Claus. We've had a Spring Fest. We had Carnival at the market. And at the Carnival at the market, we had the radio station, Eagle and 106.9, the Eagle, and a magician. And the children really loved that. And we also allowed some of the vendors had asked, they had done that last year, was a indoor yard sale. So the vendors had their own table, but they also had a yard sale table on site. When we have the events, I always try to have something that would entice them to want to come in. Everybody likes free items, so we have door prizes. Some of those are purchased through myself, and then also the vendors donate. We've had goodie bags for the children. Usually all of our tables are full. As I said, we have 25 vendors. Whenever there's a turnover, I always have somebody asking me. I'm always able to fill those tables. Right now I have 2 empty tables with 4 applications that have came in. So usually about 250 to 350 customers come through the doors on Saturday mornings. We're open 6 a.m. to 12 noon. Any advertising that I've done for the events have been through Herald Mail, the newspaper. We did have an article in the At Home Places magazine that highlighted 3 of our vendors. And I've had a table that's usually set up for community organizations such as the U.S. Census Bureau, voter registration information, healthcare organizations, currently the Money Market Program. And we also hosted Toys R Tots collection box. So we try to stay busy and have it fun when the vendors come and have it full of vendor choices. I've had a few improvements through during this time. One was to revamp and start over pre-COVID when there was going to be some reorganizing of the booths to freshen up the layout, make room for additional eating tables, and just improve the overall appearance and the flow as you're coming through the market. We changed some of the vendors around, hung a curtain in the common dishwashing area, painted benches, added eating tables, put up a welcome sign in the foyer, daily specials board, things that were very simple, things that I was able to find that was already there that I didn't have to purchase. And then also putting out pamphlets when the visitor center had closed. Then I worked out with them that I have the pamphlets in a display case where the customers can continue to find out what's going on in our area through those brochures.
Awesome, thank you. We have also recently worked out with the county to offer the Maryland Market Money Program. So this is a statewide program that's serves farmers markets across the state, and it matches the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, and the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, FMNP, benefits up to $10 a week for customers who use those EBT cards at the market. So it gives those customers more buying power, and it provides our vendors with the opportunity to earn more money because they can sell more of their products. As I mentioned, we're in an MOU with the county. We have an MOU with the county to operate this program through the end of October, so it's sort of a trial run this year. The county is actually managing the grant funds and has hired and manages the coordinator who actually sits at the desk and staffs the program. And she is there every Saturday from 8 a.m. until 12 noon. The county will keep the records, and they will provide the city monthly with a check that we can reimburse the vendors, for their sales. And at the end of October, when the trial period ends, staff will evaluate the program's impact and discuss how to or if to move the program forward. Is there anything you want to add to that program, Kathleen? Because you're there.
Sure.
It's only been up for 2 weeks, so.
So 2 weeks, and it was well received. Just in those 2 weeks, we have 11 of our 25 vendors that qualify to participate in the program. They have to sell SNAP eligible items, so some of our vendors don't qualify, such as your craft people and so on. So we have 11 vendors, and in 2 weeks, 90 tokens or $90 was taken in, and that was with one of our larger vendors not there this past weekend, Reggie. They had a wedding that they went to. But $90 is pretty good between the vendors that turned it in, and they're not really doing anything but just selling what they were always selling. It's a win-win for the customer and the vendor.
Yeah. So the last thing we're here to just review with you is whether or not to reinstate vendor fees. So in July of 2019, the council at that time directed us to have a rent-free market. And so for the last 2 years, it has been rent-free. Obviously, the number of vendors has increased, in large part thanks to finally having a coordinator in the position to do that. But expenses of the market operations and the building maintenance have definitely not decreased. The net cost of the market has increased 32% since 2017, from $64,436 in FY17 to $85,218 in FY 21, I think I had a mistake there. The pros of reinstating the fees would be obviously to lower the net cost of operating the building in the market. It would put a value on the booth space, and it would hopefully encourage vendors to become more entrepreneurial. The cons of reinstating the fees are the potential departure of vendors due to the expense of the booth, potentially more challenging to recruit new vendors, and more staff time required for the billing and collections. And one other point of consideration is that the building, as you know, is on the competitive negotiated sale list at the moment. So that's our update, and we would welcome your direction on the vendor fee, booth fee situation, and any comments or questions about other aspects of the market.
My only comment is if we finally have vendors, just leave it free. I mean, if we have people come in and go in there, I mean, that's what we wanted. I would just leave $15,000. I'd rather have the foot traffic.
Was that what? Yeah.
What did you say the total increase has been in number of vendors between the number you gave for FY17 when it was 65,000, that's a cost, and now at 85,000?
The number of vendors or the
So,
or the revenue? I can give you booth revenue.
I guess what I'm looking at is how many vendors did we have? Because I mean, that was the part and parcel of that whole conversation. How many vendors did we have when we made it free? How many vendors do we have now?
Well, I can tell you that I've been overseeing the market since December of 2017, and there have never been 25 vendors in there during that time. But that's not probably answering your question exactly. I would have to actually do that research.
Yeah, I mean, when we had that conversation as a mayor and council, if I recall correctly, almost the entire purpose of that conversation was, hey, let's remove whatever impediments there are to see if we can boost interest. And at that time, it was let's remove the cost impediment and see if that boosts interest. All I'm saying is, I'd like to know if that has actually occurred. So if we had 18 vendors then, we got 18 vendors now, or whatever that number is, that's what I want to know.
Okay, I'll have to get the details on the numbers.
Okay.
No fee.
I go every Saturday, I'm happy, it's the way it is.
Okay.
I like it.
No fee?
Yeah.
No fee.
That's it? Good?
Kitty, you were amazing as always.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
All right,
welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome officially
Thank
after
you.
a year.
And if you're in the market, just track me
Yes,
down.
I'd like
I'll
you
be
to-
walking around somewhere and say hi.
I'm only in there for about 3.5 minutes.
I know, I see you scoot in and get your sandwich from Deb and Jeff.
All right, up next, Hamilton Hotel Building Stabilization Funding.
I'm there by 5 minutes 8.
Hi, Jill.
Hello, good afternoon.
Should I wake you up?
The Hamilton Hotel project is the renovation of the property at 8698 West Washington to create 7 commercial units and 37 residential units. The building's 55,000 square feet, and the original project was estimated at a $2.5 million project. There was the unfortunate partial building collapse in November of 2020. And this is going to result in added costs to the project of $2 to $2.5 million additional on top of the original estimate. So we're here tonight to talk to you about a potential financial incentive to Ares Investment Group, and this will help with response to the building collapse, both in stabilizing the building, and the estimated cost to stabilize the building would be $716,106, and the scope of work is attached to your memo. This would allow the building to come back to re-occupancy, and part of these costs have already been incurred. Some are still ongoing, as part of the costs are still underway. So the costs that have been incurred has allowed for the road to reopen, so we have made it to that stage. And there is a temporary occupancy permit that allows for us to begin to look at reoccupancy of the building. What we're trying to do is address concerns of the situation specifically by the lender on the property. And the goal is to not only stabilize the building, but also to address and de-escalate a loan situation which will allow the project to move forward. So the recommendation is a $716,106 incentive funding, and I've attached a draft motion, and this would allow us to move forward with commitment of the funding subject to a financial incentive agreement that we would bring forward to you for separate approval. And I'm happy to take any questions.
In that financial incentive agreement, you'll outline benchmarks that would need to be met
Right.
in order to facilitate the loan to grant for that to kick in.
Right. As you see in the motion, it's recommended that half of it be a straight grant, the other half be a loan to grant with certain benchmarks to be met for the loan to grant.
Yeah.
And the reason we can't do a loan altogether is because that's not acceptable by the bank.
Correct. I think the bank would not necessarily want another lender in second position to their primary loan. And may not approve a second lender to their primary loan.
This gives me massive heartburn. But it's one of the biggest buildings in our downtown. And if it's, I would rather it be occupied and functional and beneficial to our downtown than be unoccupied and falling into our street, so.
Yeah, I mean, I could go over the list again of, at least in my tenure, the infinite number of times we've been called to the mat as, you know, as a body to address these types of situations that occur in downtown. And like it or not, when you're a city of our size and nature, you sort of have some ownership, you know, of these components, you know, to find resolution to. And so for me, it is another in that rather long list where I would say way more often than not, we've come out on the better side of things after than the side of doing nothing. And, you know, we can probably point to Maryland Theater, the Cultural Trail, I mean, you know, the old hotel, not the Alms House, and, you know, find,
Not the Alms House.
and find where we've, you know, made lemonade, so.
Are you guys good with this?
Good.
Yeah.
Rather be in front of it than behind it for a change.
You're good.
Thank
It'll
you.
be on
Thank
regular
you.
session.
All right, city administrator.
Yes.
A couple things, just stuff going on this weekend. Friday night, Imagine Hagerstown 4th Friday. Across the Pond will be the feature act. Emily Lair will open up 5 to 8 at University Plaza, 50 West Washington Street. I like to see as nice a crowd there as we had it for Amish Outlaws last month. That was a fun night. The 24th, Annapolis Bluegrass Coalition will be playing at City Park Band Show, 6 o'clock. I've actually heard them before. They are fantastic if you like bluegrass, so hope to get a good turnout there. And then as always on the 25th, the Municipal Band City Park Band Show. It's a nice weekend, should be a nice weekend to attend all of these. That's it for me.
Kristen?
I have nothing.
Tiara?
Oh, of course. Last week, Councilmember McIntyre, Mayor Keller, and I attended the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Washington County's Little Leadership Academy. It was a very intimate, very laid-back setting with the kids there and their big brothers and sisters. And we discussed our background, our goals, but those kids are awesome. They had a lot of ideas. They were very respectful, and they were just really eager to learn about the government and politics, and even had suggestions for parks. I mean, those kids are awesome. Like, they're going to be like future leaders for sure.
They went on the review committee for any playground equipment moving.
Absolutely. I wanted to tell Eric that. But thanks to them for inviting us. It was a great experience.
I can talk about the park.
Oh, I wasn't going to talk about the park, but yes. At the Wheaton Park, this past Sunday was our opening day for the Ruth Ann Monroe Summer Basketball League. And it was crowded with a lot of spectators and our players, and it was great. Shout out to Eric Dykey for making sure that there were some small improvements made to the park, such as painting the retaining wall out in front of the restrooms, mowing the grass, and shout out to HPD. Captain Langston was there and a couple officers to make sure that the crowd was controlled. It was no confrontation. They were just pretty much there to watch the game. The kids had a good time. We had DJ Gifted Son there. We had food vendors, so I'm gonna mess up the name, Sabara, yeah, they were there. A lot of volunteers showed up. It was a great turnout. And the park was cleared by 9:45. It was good, but shout out to all of the city folks to help make this possible. And looking forward to another game on Sunday.
I got nothing.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Trina Bean, who did a community cookout on Saturday. For those of you who aren't familiar with her, she does a ton of stuff for the kids in our community. A lot of times it's Western Heights because that's kind of her district, but she was selling cookout food and was giving away book bags and books and raising money so she can buy more book bags and school supplies for our kids. So it's really cool. We have people in our community that will do things like that. And congratulations to Hagerstown Hopes, who had their virtual Pride event on Saturday. It was a pretty incredible event for them to do. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do it in person, but it was still great to celebrate online. And just one last thank you to Jonathan Hager Elementary and their summer camp. Ms. Palmer's class had me come in today and talk to, she had a group of young ladies from 3rd grade to 5th grade. And just like the Big Brothers, Big Sisters kids, they had incredible questions and ideas, and they want to be part of the solution in our community, which I am always thrilled about when I talk to little kids. So thanks for having me. And with that, we're adjourned.
You guys should take Aries next time.